across the room and to meet your eyes with curiosity. What will I feel if you touched my hand? Where would that take us? Across the room and stared deep inside infelicity, or is it my disguise? What if we run away and started a new life? Would I give it all away just to see you? Would I give it all away just to hold you? Feel on top of the world, yeah. I dare not assume to know my place, given history, or is it my disguise? Can I trust this muse? Can it even save me? Would it sell me all away just to see you? 'Cause I'd give it all away just to hold you and be on top of the world, yeah. Disgrace when I see your face, knowing you're gone. I'm a disgrace when I think of your face and know that you're gone. 'Cause I'd give it all away just to see you. I'd give myself away just to hold you and be on top of the world.
about to embark on an amazing journey. It could be the journey of a lifetime. It's a journey into the internet radio world unlike you've ever seen before. It's the all-new Hey Z Radio Network.
There's the view from the left, the view from the right, the view from the middle, and then there's the broader view. Now let's join the lady who put the Z back in talk, the original Hey Z.
Hello, and welcome to the Hey Z Radio Network. The best programming on the internet is right here. And now, without further delay, here's your host for this evening's festivities, Hey Z herself.
Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the Broader View on the Hey Z Radio Network with your host, Hey Z. And unfortunately, my co-host, Wanda, is unavailable for this evening, so I have a very special co-host. We have Miss Clarissa.
Woohoo!
How are you, my dear?
You know, I'm awesome. I think it's really cool because for the last 2 weeks, I got to play the part of Zeta on Backstage.
I'm sorry.
And now tonight, I'm playing the part of Wanda on the Broader View.
Are you beginning to... Are you change your name to Sybil?
You know, I might.
If you
Multiple personality disorder.
Yeah, so now all you have to do is just like replace Doug and Scott this week, and then you'll have all the personalities there.
I can totally replace Scott.
Anybody can, yeah. He's just kind of like trained. Yeah, we can handle Doug, and we can handle Scott. So we'll just take over the network. It'll become all the ladies.
I can do a really good Doug impression as well, but not on the air.
Oh. You have to do that off air so I know what it is.
Yeah, well, it's smelly.
Oh. I don't have that sound effect on my computer, unfortunately. That would be Scott would have that.
You know, Scott does have a lot of those sound effects. And last week on the Broader View, we were talking about how Doug, who all of our listeners know is my brother, he's my younger brother, but Doug is making so many female acquaintances that we're calling him the slut of Pukwudgie Media. And so all throughout the show last week, whenever the topic of Doug and one of his female acquaintances would come up, Scott would play a sound effect. It was this boing sound effect.
Poor Doug.
He loved it.
Oh, that's funny.
He loved it. And he even tells people now, we had our production meeting last night, and Carl, my co-host on Periscope Uncensored, and Brandon, Doug's co-host on Animazing Radio, were both part of the production meeting. Mm-hmm. And Doug is boasting about how he is now the slut of Pukwudgie Media.
Now, do we have to label him the slut of Hey Z Radio Network, too?
That might not be a bad thing.
It could be arranged.
I think. Well, and he was asking you for a raise, so maybe if you give him that title, maybe that could be his raise.
That could very well be. He might like that better than a raise.
Yeah, well, he's got title, which back in the in medieval times, which he's a big fan of. The noble lords had titles.
I don't know if we're going to say that he's noble.
Well, he's a noble gas.
Yeah, he's noble something or other. Yeah, no, we could probably do that. I could probably arrange that. I think I could arrange that. I'm going to put that on my list of things to do. In lieu of a raise, while you're in the loo thinking about it.
Right.
There. How's that? I think I could do that. He deserves it. Yeah. But you guys have working your tails off, so thank you very, very much for jumping in and covering for me for the last couple weeks.
I had so much fun doing that. It was a break from the traditional style of show that I do.
Yeah.
And, because it's not often that I just get to kick back and have fun and just be goofy on the air.
True, because the backstage is really what that format is. It's just sit back and have a good time. So really, that's kind of why I wanted a show like that anybody could sit in and do the show. And
Yeah.
people get to see another side of the different hosts of the network. So
Yeah. And I didn't have the pressure of trying to come up with intelligent questions for a guest.
no, because none of
Because
us are intelligent.
really, when you're talking to Wanda, how intelligent do the questions have to be?
Exactly. So I mean, none of us are really that intelligent, and really by Friday, who the hell is?
Right.
So we don't have any brain left by that time because we're all fried from the week. So dead air is a good thing on a Friday night because you're all snoring. But
Yeah.
no, I think backstage is a lot of fun to do. No
Yeah, I
prep,
had a
just go and
great
have a good
time. If you were one to ever need me to fill in again for that show, I am all on board. It was a lot of fun. My sides still hurt from laughing so hard.
Well, see,
And-
and in saying that, you can call in any time. It's it's an open mic show. So if you wanted to call in and just come in and have a good time with us, you can certainly do that.
I might start doing that more frequently.
Yeah. I mean, because it really does, believe it or not, it really does relax you for the week. It just brings everything down and you can just have a good It's like going out and having a drink with friends. Just play some music, have a good time, tell a few jokes, tell some stories, and just kick back. And that's what it's all about.
Yeah, and it was a lot of fun. Wanda was just enthralled with mine and Doug's family stories.
I love family stories.
And Doug and I have got some really good family stories.
See, now I have to go listen. I'll have to have Scott send me the recording of it.
Oh yeah,
so I can listen.
Yeah, and last week we were telling stories about our brother Michael.
Oh God, Michael is so funny. Anyway.
Oh, Mikey is my oldest brother, and I love him to pieces.
Mm-hmm.
But there is a reason why I call him my fairy godbrother.
Yeah, exactly.
There's a reason my son calls him Aunt Mike.
Yes, exactly.
And that's because there are times when Michael looks better as a woman than I do.
Isn't that the truth?
And he takes it as a compliment.
Oh, of course he would.
He can put on those fishnet stockings and the knee-length hooker boots and, put on his wig and do his makeup. And I'm like, Mikey, will you do my makeup? No, honey, I only do my own.
How rude.
Are you serious?
How rude.
I know.
No, see, I'd be wanting lessons.
Yeah.
I'd have to. I would be expecting that. So now, when you head back east this summer, are you going to expect lessons?
I might try to get him to give me lessons. Mm-hmm. Because I'm making more and more public appearances, and I'm having more and more photo opportunities.
Uh-huh.
And especially after Ghost Stock, I looked at some of those pictures and went, "Oh my goddess, I do not look good."
See, you could have a whole makeover if you wanted.
Yeah, I really need to get some. And I was never taught. Mom never taught me how to put on makeup.
Oh, didn't she?
No.
Oh, God, my mom was a makeup artist. So, yeah.
Yeah, so I never
we had
officially
that.
learned how to put on makeup.
Well, actually, I take that back. What she did is, I don't think my other sisters went, but I was the one who was tall and gangly, and I was 5'10" at 13, and I weighed about 100 pounds, soaking wet.
Right.
I don't anymore, but so she took me to etiquette school.
Oh.
And it was actually not even etiquette, it was a modeling school, because she wanted me to start modeling, which I did for about a year. I modeled. I didn't like it. I was a runway model. So there they taught you how to put on different styles of makeup, whether it be day wear, evening wear, fashion wear, runway look. I mean, it was all this stuff.
Right.
And then after that, the makeup styles changed throughout the years. And
right.
So then Mom and I would always go over to, one of the department stores and take a makeup class and learn how to put on that style of makeup. It's kind of cool, actually. The fun things that you can do with makeup.
Yeah. And, I've always been somewhat of a tomboy. I clean up good, but I've always been somewhat of a tomboy, and when I do wear makeup, I really prefer, the natural look
Me too.
and everything. And when Michael puts on makeup, there is nothing natural looking about it. I mean,
There's nothing natural looking about Michael. So
well, that's true. And he and Doug went to a comic convention, or they went to some sort of convention 2 weekends in a row, actually. But
yeah.
this last one, Doug's sending me the pictures and everything, and I'm going, man, Michael's not smiling. And then it dawned on me, he probably wasn't wearing his teeth.
I love it. I love it.
I'm like, well, that explains a lot.
He was having an off day.
Yeah.
He was having a chomper day.
He was.
Yeah.
And so you can always tell when Michael's not wearing his teeth because he doesn't smile.
See, you're going to have Michael listen to the show when we have Esther Goldberg on.
Oh, yeah.
I'm gonna try to get Mrs. Richfield on. Miss Richfield, who is the other drag queen up here in Minnesota. But Esther Goldberg, he will love Esther Goldberg, who is,
I'm sure he will,
crazy, insane. Now, I don't know if you saw the post that I posted a week or so ago about bringing back Paul Lynde, the Paul Lynde Show.
Yes.
Theater presentation. That's the gentleman who does Esther Goldberg. So that's his alter ego, Michael Arrington, who is fabulous and hysterical. So, yeah, we'll bring Esther on.
Yeah, that would be great.
Yeah.
And, last week on Animazing, Doug had Trielle Freshie.
I love that show. I listened to it. It was great. It was great.
Yeah, and, I wasn't really out of my comfort zone per se, but I was definitely enlightened because there's there's quite a bit of difference between what Trielle does and what Michael does.
Sure, absolutely.
And,
but
so,
it really
I learned a few things.
Yeah, I mean, what both Michael do and what Trielle does, and what Esther Goldberg does, really is an art form, and I don't think many people realize how much work actually goes into putting all that together, to being able to transform yourself from one person and gender to another person and gender, whether you're gay or not. I mean, there are straight men who do this too, and there are gay men who do it. It is an art form, and I think it's an incredible art form, actually.
Absolutely. And, after hearing Trielle talk about his bag of boobs.
Yes.
And, all of the work that goes into, the stuffing and padding and everything, I am definitely going to think twice the next time I start complaining about being well endowed and how badly they make my back and shoulders hurt and everything. Because there are men that pay good money to have what I've got naturally.
Exactly. But I'm telling you. See, I grew up in that genre, being in the theater. I mean, it was all over the place. I mean, it was just part of our family. And to watch these guys transform, from these burly guys, I mean, we didn't have just the dancers, but we had these, I'm pigeonholing, but I don't really want to, but you go from a guy who is very masculine and watch them, and it takes hours for them to transform. And then they come out of the dressing room fully dressed, and they are totally unrecognizable from when they walked in there. And it's incredible.
And the first time I saw Trielle, I was totally fooled.
Yeah.
I thought it was just a really beautiful woman.
Yeah. Yeah.
And Ed Trielle said that was the best compliment he could ever have.
Absolutely. 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 There was a stage production that we saw. This was a long, long, long time ago. My mother and my sisters and I went. And it was a Broadway production. And I can't remember the name of it. But the majority of the cast were female. Little did we know when they came out after the second curtain call, they were all men. Every single one of them.
Oh, like a kabuki show or something.
Yeah, you would have had no idea that these guys were all men. I mean, beautiful women. Beautiful. It was really cool. You know, and then, of course, La Cage aux Folles is one that I saw. And the other one was, shoot, went right out of my head. The one with Liza Minnelli and, oh, shoot. It'll come to me.
I'm drawing a blank.
I have Carousel in my head, and
familiar
that's not it. It's, gosh. Okay, now I have to look up. Now I have to Google. Here I am Googling.
And it was a stage production, not a movie?
It was originally a movie, and then it was actually a stage production first, and then they made it into a movie with something Gray. What's his name? Gray. And Liza Minnelli were in the movie side of it. I mean, I can see the production. I can see the. Okay, I can do it this way. I mean, I can hear the music in it. It was based in Germany, World War II.
Oh, wow.
It is from... Okay, let me grab this. Okay, it's going to drive me crazy. Here we go. Let's see if I can get this. Okay, now I have to look it up. It's not telling me what I wanted to tell me. So I'm going to do it this way. Okay, we'll do it that way. I'll think of it. But anyway, so what's new with you? God, I haven't talked to you like forever.
I know. It's been a while. You know, I took a gamble last week, and I'm not going to say very much about it, but I did take a gamble with my professional investigation career, and it looks like that gamble might be paying off. I don't know for sure yet, and so I'm kind of keeping quiet. But I'm not much of a risk taker, and I went, well, what the heck, you know, what's the worst that can happen? And it looks like that gamble might actually be paying off. So there could be a lot more public appearances from me coming up here in the very near future. So
very cool. Mm-hmm. And when are we going to hear about all these new adventures?
I think that an official decision will be made the end of June.
Oh, nice. So soon.
Yeah. But I have been invited to speak at the Paranormal Kicks Cancer Convention in September in Orlando. So we'll be hearing more about that here in the upcoming months on the network. I'll definitely be doing a lot of promoting for that event. It is a benefit paranormal convention for children's cancer research.
Oh, way cool.
Yeah. So that's one thing I can talk about right now is that I will be speaking at the PKC event in Orlando.
Very, very cool.
In September. So, yeah.
Very, very cool. You are going to be busy.
I am going to be busy.
You're not going to be anywhere around. We're going to have to call you remotely and do your shows.
Well, and you know, I've done shows remotely in the past, and it kind of almost sort of worked. So I think if we can get a few bugs worked out, and a couple of kinks worked out, I think that's probably a very real possibility for some of the up and coming shows.
I still think it's going to be cool. I think it's going to be great. Good for you.
I'm excited.
You worked a long time for it, so I think you absolutely deserve it.
Yeah, you know, I've got very close to 20 years of paranormal investigation research experience under my belt.
Yeah.
And, you know, my books are becoming more and more successful on the subject. And so I'm excited to see where this is going and, you know, how all of my hard work and effort is finally starting to pay off in some form. You know, I've never been in this for fame and fortune or
no, you haven't. No.
Any kind of self-gratification. But,
you know, good things come to those who wait.
Yeah.
See, and you've been waiting a long time, and you've been somewhat patient about it.
Somewhat. I'm not a patient person.
No, you're not. That I know.
I am not a patient person, but
well, Well, congratulations. Good for you.
Thank you.
Good for you.
Thank you. And
lots of good things.
Yeah, I'm excited.
You should be. But we have a really good guest coming up that we should probably go get. We have Mr. Tom.Rasch, who is a phenomenal artist. His work in Black Alpha, and he's been with Marvel Comics. He's been in the New York Times. His work is like all over the place now. And so we're going to go and get him. Aren't you excited?
I love his profile picture on his Facebook page, even though that's not him.
I did not tell him that you were ogling at him.
Well, you said it wasn't him, so technically I'm not ogling him.
It might be, though. I think it might actually be.
Oh, well, I think that's definitely a question that we need to ask him.
We could have the first time that Clarissa is going to be speechless on this show.
A hazy radio first here, folks.
And he's
tonight on the Broader View.
Yeah, and he's located in your area. He's in your state.
Really? He's in Colorado?
Yeah, he is. Yeah.
Oh my God! We're gonna have to ask him if that's him, and then if it is, we're gonna find out if he's single.
I know exactly. Okay, folks, don't go away. We'll be right back. You're listening to the Broader View on the Hazy Radio Network.
A gift for the anime lover in your life? Trying to track down those hard-to-find art and guidebooks for your favorite show? Check out HomecircleMedia.com for the latest in anime stationery supplies, accessories, collectibles, and more. We offer competitive prices, free shipping for orders over $99, and an incentives program that will keep you coming back for more. Please visit www.homecirclemedia.com today. Love the shows? Show the love.
You read the paper. You watch the news. Have you ever considered that you're not getting the whole story? This is Dr. Truth.
And this is Dr. Drake. Tune in to the radio show Earth, Saturday nights, 10 to midnight.
We'll be exposing what the elites are doing all over the world.
We don't want you to believe us. Get a pen out and check us out.
It's the radio show accused of telling the truth. Earth.
The most controversial planet in the solar system. Saturday nights, 10 to midnight, Eastern Time, on the Hazy Radio Network.
This weekend, unplug. Getting closer to nature can get you closer to your family. To find the forest nearest you, go to discovertheforest.org. Brought to you by the U.S. Forest Service and the Ad Council.
Hey, it's Scott, host of Crossing the Void Radio, here on the Hazy Radio Network. So, with the warm weather of summer coming, we all want to be outside at the beach or just with our family and friends enjoying it, right? Make sure you're ready for summer with the Hazy Radio Network as well. Yeah, and I know what you're saying, Scott. How do we do that? Well, I'm going to tell you. Hazy Radio Network is found on many mobile applications for your Android, iPhone, or iPad. Applications like YourMuse.fm, iTunes, TalkStream Live, and many more. Just find your favorite, and we're probably there. Always remember the motto, be prepared. Drink lots of water, use plenty of sunscreen, and always remember to listen to Crossing the Void Radio and the Hazy Radio Network. To find more about where you can find the Hazy Radio Network, come to our website, www.hazyradio.com.
We know you're out there. We know you can hear us. We're going to show you a place where the rules of this world don't always apply. A place where the common conception known as reality doesn't exist. We will lead you over the bridge, crossing the void you may fear to tread across. Where you take it from there, we leave that decision up to you. We only have one question to ask. Are you ready? Crossing the Void Radio, every Wednesday night from 8 p.m. to midnight Eastern Time on the Hazy Radio Network. To learn more about Crossing the Void Radio, go to our website, www.crossingthevoidradio.com.
Son of a...
Hey, Doug. Doug, what are you doing?
Oh, hey, Scott. I'm getting ready for Periscope Uncensored on Friday nights.
By expanding your vocabulary.
Well, it is uncensored.
Well, Doug, the Uncensored and Periscope Uncensored is Clarissa Vasquez and getting down to brass tacks with all aspects of the paranormal. It's not what you'd call a traditional radio program. There's no fluff on their show.
So no off-color commentary?
Well, I didn't say that.
Awesome. Oh,
Doug?
I just hit my head.
Oh, boy. I'll get you a nice pack. Catch Periscope Uncensored, Friday nights at 10 p.m. Eastern, only on the Hazy Radio Network.
Break the night into a million stars. Hold to the train. Every goodbye draws a little pain. With every emotion there lights a spark. See those colors of the faces in the dark. So for now, let's go out and tonight into day. Break the night into a million stars. Hold out your fire and join the cause. 'Cause tonight we wave a hand to say goodbye for now, hello someday. Light has covered up the night. Our fire so bright I can barely see the fight. With every victory, the smoke draws clear, and like a train we move on without a fear. So for now, let's go out and tonight into day. Break the light into a million stars. Hold out your fire and join the cause. 'Cause tonight we wave a hand to say goodbye for now, hello someday. So for now, let's go out and tonight into day. Say hello to the time as we go our way. Break the night into a million stars.
Looking at the world through the wide-angle lens. It's The Broader View with Hazy and on the Hazy Radio Network. Now, back to the show.
And welcome back to the Broader View, everybody, with your host, Hazy, and my special co-host, Clarissa. And we have a very special guest, and I'm really excited to have him back. In fact, we were talking off air. And it's been about 3 years since I've talked to him. And so much has happened to him, and I'm really excited. We have Mr. Tom Rasch, who is an accomplished comic book and concept artist who has worked with Marvel Comics, Sony Online, The Animation Farm, Actionopolis, Gazillion Entertainment, and Burst Online, among others, contributing to his talent to IP such as Punisher 2099, The Hardy Boys and Nancy Drew, the PSN title, paint, and covers for the Actionopolis book online. Tom, welcome to the show.
Hey guys, how's it going?
It's going very, very well. How are you?
Great.
Yeah, it's funny. That's kind of a mouthful when you sit there and list all those things.
I know, but it's a good mouthful.
Yeah.
Like I said, I've talked to you before, so I know your history and I know when all this started. But for people who have not heard you yet, this has been really a lifelong passion for you. You started this when you were very young.
Yeah, well, I always tell people, I guess for people who don't know who I am or haven't, I guess, heard the previous interview we did a few years ago. I can't believe it's been that long already. My dad was stationed in Guam, and my first memories of television were Star Trek, Batman, and Spider-Man were on TV, and so that I was just hooked as obviously a youngster then. Right around the same time, I noticed I had gone through and found a bunch of drawings that my mother had done when she was a teenager, and I started copying those. So kind of between catching, like genre, which is now obviously all over the place, like nerd cultures on television back then. Between that and then my mom being my original inspiration for drawing and being an artist, yeah, I've kind of been into those things since almost preschool, really, and I've never kind of looked back. And so I was always drawing for a number of years, and then the running joke I have is that when people would ask, like especially as a little kid, if somebody said, "Well, what do you want to do when you grow up? What do you want to do for a living?" and the kids would say fireman, cop, and I would say starship captain. They laughed. They thought I was kidding, but I wasn't, because I'm like, by the time I grow up, there'll be a bunch of big starships flying around, because Captain Kirk was like my first idol. And then, of course, as I got a little bit older, too, I discovered other things like music and actually comic books themselves and films. And so probably around late grade school years, I was also like, besides being a starship captain, I would actually like to write and direct films. I want to be a rock star. I want to basically do comic books, and people laugh at this one, but this is also true. I actually wanted to do hair at one time. I wanted to be a stylist. So those 5 things are kind of always been like my goals. And so I joke around when I'm at cons or I do panel discussions, and I say, it's up to you guys to decide which ones I actually made come true. So, but yeah, that's pretty much, it's like everything I tell people, everything I've been into. I never went through that phase like some kids do, where you're like, well, I kind of drew for a while when I was younger. I was into comic books when I was younger, and then I still collect action figures and toys. Mm-hmm. So none of that stuff has ever left me, which I'm grateful for, because it seems like now culture in the last few years to a decade has obviously caught up with how much that permeates our culture. You know what I mean? Like with the superhero movies and TV shows like the Big Bang Theory, et cetera. So
when really when you think about it, though, you've already accomplished all that. Because you do all that within your work. Everything you dreamed of being, you're putting into your work.
Except for Starship Captain. I always tell people I'm still holding out on that one. So
you're working up. You're still private.
Yeah.
You're up to a sergeant. No, you've passed private.
Well, that's the interesting thing as well. I do have a hairdresser or two in the family, but I'm sort of the layperson's hairdresser. That's still an interest of mine. So I guess in a way I kind of made that one happen. But the primary 3, well, and the funny thing is too, like a lot of kids from my generation who were actually around, like when Star Trek became huge in syndication in the early 70s, and then Star Wars premiering, it really kind of literally changed the life of a generation, and then moving forward with anyone inspired by those kinds of things. And so Star Wars for me especially inspired me, like I said, to want to get into films. But a lot of people don't believe it now, but I was an extremely shy art nerd kid, and so I was kind of thinking, I can't do movies. I don't want to enter. I didn't, I was like, I was too scared to go to film school or do any of that stuff, because I'm like, I can't swim with the sharks of the entertainment industry. Yeah. So I knew that I wanted to do storytelling. So I'm like, well, comics is kind of like an illustrated version of that, except that I tell people, comic book artists too have been so underappreciated for years, but they're kind of an interesting sort of style of artist, because you kind of have to be everything. You have to be an architect, a draftsman, a fashion designer, an actor, a cinematographer, a director, all that rolled up into one as an artist itself. Right. And so I felt like everything that I've been into, and if I sit there and look back on it too, even when I would take my action figures, and I spent a lot of time, like a lot of kids who were probably socially awkward, spending a lot of time by myself, either drawing or playing with my toys, my action figures, my ships, stuff from Star Trek. I'd make up, storyline scenarios for those. So it's kind of like in my adult years, I tell people, I'm like, well, I'm creating my own characters that I'm sort of playing in the sandbox, where I'm still coming up with storylines for them. And it's still, like you said, and now kind of venturing more into the realm of like television and film. It is sort of like, I'm trying to make all those things kind of converge on a synergistic level. So,
and it has, but it all fits. I mean, what you do, your artistry is so now. I mean, the sci-fi series and the comic book series never go out of style. Superhuman powers and strengths, none of that goes out of style. So you picked the right.
Yeah, it is. Well, the interesting thing is it's kind of gone the other direction, where it didn't go out of style. I mean, like I said, if you sit there and think about it, we live in a really interesting time where, super movies are king of the box office. Excuse me. Right. And actors now can make or break a career on starring in a superhero related film. And even on television, I mean, we have, I think it's 6 comic book inspired related titles, that are premiering on Fox and CW, So it kind of goes to show that And I always tell people, I said, basically what anyone who's been into these things for many, many years, technology, especially on the comics end, finally caught up to basically produce, because Hollywood needs big ideas to support the big technology of like special effects and computer generated imagery, the graphics. So they need ideas and concepts, and Hollywood, like I said, technology kind of put Hollywood and comics together, that it can show us these amazing things, that, and of course, the age that I am, I can remember when the effects of the first Star Wars film were groundbreaking.
Yeah.
Some of that stuff still holds up to this day, but yeah, I mean, I can't imagine kind of how the kids that go to see superhero movies at the box office now, what they see, would have been mind blowing to anyone, especially growing up in the 70s.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that's why things are kind of where they're at, because like I said, they give us such powerful imagery. It's iconic. They're great stories, the recycled mythology, and they can be entertainment, simple entertainment for some people, or people like myself. I kind of walk away with a multi-level experience of being inspired, making choices, how to get through life, as well as just kind of enjoying sort of the visual, the inspiration of what the stories are telling us, in the eye candy. So
yes, absolutely. And I don't think, growing up, when we were watching Star Trek and Star Wars and all that, I don't think we paid attention to the psychology of that genre of entertainment. It wasn't until after the fact that we actually realized that there's some history that's going on here. There's some more than just a storyline that they're talking about. They're changing history. All the different things that come out of it. When you think about the human rights that were involved, economic features that were involved, we never thought of that watching this.
Well, I'd always read that one of Gene Roddenberry's notions when he was creating the show was that he was inspired by the novels of Captain Horatio Hornblower, which he called the greatest adventure fiction ever read. He loved the idea of kind of this during the days of like the Empire, when the world was uncharted, and you kind of had the stalwart captain kind of making decisions and being the ambassador, to sort of be a reflection of like coming across new ideas, new things. How do you deal with those? But then also he said Gulliver's Travels, where you could take basically a storyline and turning it into an allegory about the modern themes, but it wouldn't be like preaching or hitting someone over the head. Plus, you could get past the censors that way. And yeah, obviously, when we grew up on that stuff, I pretty much just thought it was like, here's this crew, this really heroic captain. They've got ray guns, a really huge, cool spaceship. I love it. And as I've gotten older, and kind of interestingly, in a sort of a reverse engineering way, Star Trek actually taught me a lot. I didn't realize that there were things going on in those shows, whether it was a little something about history in one episode where they do time travel, a statement about the Romulans are actually based on the Roman Empire.
Yes.
Numerous things that I can go back and watch those on Netflix and go, wow, I actually learned some of the terminologies as a kid, even when it came to Greek culture, like they had an episode with Apollo, that all this, there was kind of an educational undercurrent that was going on. But yeah, I really appreciate the characterization mixed in with just, it's always a statement of man's human history, his condition, and whether or not hopefully we'll learn some things from that, right?
Absolutely.
Now, you mentioned some of this programming that you grew up with as a kid, and I think I read somewhere that some of those characters, the personalities of some of those characters have even made it into the characters of your own design, like the personalities of Bruce Wayne and Luke Skywalker and things like that. Is that correct?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I've sometimes have taken it for granted, but because since I've been working in comics and games and actually have worked with people now who've worked on the Star Wars movies and other films as well as video game franchises, I was actually surprised to hear that a lot of my colleagues actually either don't have an interest or just isn't in them to kind of create their own world, I guess, to tell their stories. So I suppose it's one of those things, like some people just kind of maybe have that natural instinct. And so if you're like, and I think a novelist is obviously included, any kind of writers on this list, but I think you're always going to have this sort of creative stew of influences that will always kind of sort of infiltrate your work. So with that being said, yeah, I mean, I know for me, like, because I was introduced to, like, especially for superheroes, Batman and Spider-Man. With Batman, you have actually a guy that is a human being that sort of pushes himself to kind of become more than just a man, but he still has the cool, the Batmobiles, the cool ride, the gadgets. Spider-Man's story, especially as I got older, is I think I appreciated the fact that here's this guy that's been handed this responsibility but he's one of us. He is your next door neighbor. You know, so I've always kind of been attracted. I mean, don't get me wrong, I love like the X-Men and Superman, but I've been attracted to the guys that basically I can relate to, which is kind of what you want in a character. If you want to join them on their kind of their hero's journey, you want to be able to emotionally get invested and kind of ride on the shoulders of these characters as they experience these kind of highs and lows of life that are a metaphor for us. But yeah, I mean, I would say because of loving Batman and Spider-Man and eventually Iron Man, some of that would find its kind of concepts into my story, and then the fact that it's also taking kind of space opera or cosmic background, but is still an allegory for stuff that we experience here for politics, etc. All that would make its way into the work, and then of course, yeah, I mean, you know, the Luke Skywalker story is actually kind of a classic, almost Arthurian take of us. You know, this sort of young kid who's kind of in the outer reaches that sort of is initially resistant to experience the adventure of life. He resists the call to adventure, and then he learns things along the way. He's supposed to learn, just like we grow as a culture and as a species.
Yep.
You know, so there's some of that. But then, you know, I'm also a big sucker for redemption storylines, kind of the same, where you got the guy that seems a little selfish, like Han Solo, but eventually, you know, underneath all of that, you know, you're not sure maybe why he's damaged. Sometimes the stories will or will not reflect those things, but you know, too, like he'll grow as a character. And then, like even the Bruce Wayne, you know, the fact that my character is kind of like Bruce Wayne, where he's so driven initially by mission because of his family being lost, that he's so focused on that concept of whether or not it's righting the wrongs done to him or making sure they don't happen to other people, that, you know, underneath still that there's some humanity there, you know, those kinds of things. So anyway, I hope I have a bad tendency. I've said this before. I go off on tangents. I hope I answer questions fairly concise. So I hope that makes sense.
Well,
somewhat.
To me, it absolutely makes sense, and I know to Clarissa it does too, because
absolutely
it is true. And I think we do associate more with the kind of superhero that is the guy next door, and a person who actually has faults. And I think it encourages us as human beings, normal human beings, to actually step outside of our box and try to do something right, even if we don't have a costume. You know,
exactly.
It really puts that thought in your head going, you know, there's something wrong about something or other in our society, and we as individuals can change our way of thinking and find our own power to correct it.
Yeah, because I mean, really, if you sit there and think about it, I'll nerd out about kind of an anthropological philosophy that I have, is that the number one thing that pushes our species forward since the beginning of what we record as time and our place on this earth is communication. Mm-hmm. I mean, obviously that changes kind of the way ideas are presented, how we create infrastructure within culture. And of course, technology's changed that, you know, exponentially because of how quickly we can ingest information. But it's still so many varied forms of it that boil down to being inspired by ideas. And if it's a personal hero, a teacher in school, some people get inspired by the Bible, some people get inspired by self-help books, whatever spiritual connection you feel, you know, you're drawn to. And to me, as funny as it would sound to some people, comic books and Star Trek have been that for me most of my life, which is, you know, like you said, it's an idea to sort of realize we want to belong to an association, but yet also kind of realizing too that we are creatures of inspiration, you know, on whatever direction we're going. And sometimes, you know, I've said this before, if I'm having a blue moment, I practice. And I think, I don't know if you remember this from your show from 3 years ago, I said I was going to jokingly make a bracelet that said WWCKD, which would be what would Captain Kirk do.
Yes, I remember that. Yes.
That I've actually taken. I've been able to kind of get through moments in life going, what would this character do? How would he face the odds? And sometimes, you know, that kind of allows me to pick myself up. And I think that, like I said, that's why it's important. And even personally, what I'm doing with my project, just to kind of take another character's story that, you know, and it's weird. It comes from my head, but it's almost like the characters and the stories start to create themselves, basically. Yeah. But it's sort of like I'm there in their journey. And of course, there's going to be some autobiographical elements that'll work their way. But it's the same kind of thing. Like, hopefully, as the public gets to know my characters and their story, they'll understand, like, maybe they'll be inspired by some of the choices or relate to the difficult choices that a character has to go through. Yeah. And the one thing that I will say that I think is kind of encouraging, and not to kind of, I tend to kind of keep my views close to the chest, because I feel like those are discussions I generally have with friends and people. Like, I'm talking like political and theological, but the one thing that I sort of felt was sort of a tough time for kids growing up in the 90s was there was a lot of hip hop and a lot of that kind of thing, where there's a place for everything, and we're not all inspired by that stuff. But I sort of felt like for a bit there, kids were probably getting confusing messages from these characters of pop culture.
Absolutely.
And I feel like superheroes, with them becoming so popular, hopefully they'll sort of get people back to a place of where the gist of the message is you're supposed to help people out, or do something compassionate or kind, and whatever that is, that can take on the form of a guy flying around in a cape and helping people from burning buildings. But I mean, really, it's a metaphor for, how do you help your fellow person, or, how do you be loyal to a friend, and all those kinds of things. And I think that that's kind of encouraging. But like you said, with my character, he starts out young in the story. And so what we have planned, and I'll say this real quick too, I forgot to mention this. I'm really excited because I'm working with a screenwriter named Adam Volk. We're getting an entire packaging together, but he's helping me write the Black Alpha comic. So we have a lot of story meetings about where I see things ending up eventually, how many stories I want to tell with it, where the character starts, and where he ends up, those kinds of things. And you want to sort of have that end game figured out. But my lead character, Trandon Atari, is the one who goes by Black Alpha. His story will kind of unfold in a much more naturalistic nature. There'll be a lot of flashbacks. And what I want the audience to hopefully connect with is when the character goes through stuff, anybody in the audience should be able to go, I know what that feels like, or I would I would understand what that feels like to be in any of these characters' shoes.
Absolutely. When you started putting this together, and I know you've been working on this for a long time, as you're writing it, even as you're writing the concept, have you been able to discover things about yourself that you didn't realize that were there?
In some ways, I guess I have. I think that I've learned that, well, even now, I mean, we're always a work in progress. That's probably one of the biggest things that I've kind of gotten out of this. The message that I'm trying to relay in my story is that there's always hope. There's always a moment for redemption, and there's always room for growth. So
right. I just think it's cool. I just think this is phenomenal. Okay, let's do this. Let's go ahead and go to our top of the hour break. I know we're a little bit early. When we come back, we will go ahead and talk about how you got into Black Alpha and where Black Alpha is going from here. So Don't go away, folks. You're listening to The Broader View on the Hazy Radio Network. We'll be right back.
Hey everyone, it's Karen Frazier. I'm here with my co-host of Paranormal Underground Radio, Rick Hale.
Hi everyone.
We invite you to join Paranormal Underground Radio on the Hazy Radio Network to explore the unexplained every Thursday night from 6 to 8 p.m. Pacific and other times in the flyover states.
Each week we talk with investigators in the field, researchers, authors, and experts about topics that include paranormal investigation, ufology, cryptozoology, and spirituality.
So please join us each Thursday at 6 p.m. Pacific, 9 p.m. Eastern for Paranormal Talk with great guests right here on HazyRadioNetwork.com.
Fox News Radio. I'm Ron Platter. The American prisoner of war released Saturday in Afghanistan willfully walked off his base before being captured 5 years ago. That's what senior defense officials tell Fox News about Army Sergeant Bo Bergdahl, who's swapped for 5 Taliban prisoners, was justified in Poland today by President Obama.
We don't leave our men or women in uniform behind.
Well, the president said that rule applies to Bergdahl, regardless of the circumstances. Republicans are slamming the fact that the conditions this time involve releasing 5 Taliban commanders from the U.S. military prison at Guantanamo. White House officials stepped up their legal justification by noting the law allows Defense Secretary Chuck Hagel to transfer a prisoner from Gitmo to a foreign country if it's in the national security interest of the United States.
Fox's Ed Henry traveling with the president in Poland. Republicans are hoping to reclaim control of the Senate. They're focusing on some races in today's primaries. Live in D.C., Fox News Radio's Rachel Sutherland.
Ron, longtime Mississippi Senator Thad Cochran is trying to fend off a cutthroat U.S. Senate challenge from State Senator Chris McDaniel. The incumbent got a boost when some of McDaniel's supporters were accused of exploiting Cochran's bedridden wife.
The McDaniel campaign scandal spreads. Had enough?
In Iowa, the GOP banded together to support State Senator Joni Ernst, who has a commanding lead in a recent poll. In South Dakota, former Republican Governor Mike Rounds is expected to clinch the GOP Senate nomination to replace retiring Democrat Tim Johnson. Ron.
Rachel, tornado warnings have been popping up in Nebraska and Iowa. The biggest thunderstorm threat now?
The southern third of the state of Iowa and the northern part of Missouri.
Andy Irvin of the National Weather Service. Hail and wind forecast to do some damage as the string of thunderstorms moves through the plains and upper Midwest as the evening rolls on and the storms pick up. You're listening to Fox News Radio. Fair and balanced.
Weekdays on Fox Business.
Bottom line here is we want investors to be prepared for the day ahead, the week ahead.
Opening Bell with Maria Bartiromo.
The concept is to bring perspective, analysis. All day long, I'm speaking with global allocators of capital, CEOs, heads of state, so I can anticipate some of the major moves or reactions, giving investors an edge.
Opening Bell with Maria Bartiromo. Weekdays at 9 a.m. Eastern on Fox Business.
Weeknights, Kelly brings the heat.
Developing tonight, a Kelly File exclusive. This is breaking news. We're just getting this.
Inside today's most explosive stories.
That's not the way it was supposed to go down.
Getting answers and challenging the status quo.
Sir, it's a back and forth. I'm not just going to give you the platform for a soliloquy. Don't come on here and spit. I will leave that to you to decide.
Powerful, insightful, fair, and balanced. Megyn Kelly taking prime time to the next degree.
Join me for the Kelly File, weeknights at 9.
The I-495 bridge near Wilmington, Delaware remains closed, and officials say it'll stay that way. Engineers saying the support pillars are tilting. Traffic has been diverted to I-95. He had the ingredients to build a bomb. That's what federal agents say about a San Francisco man who made a court appearance today. Live from our West Coast Bureau, Fox News Radio's Jessica Rosenthal.
An affidavit says Ryan Chamberlain II had screws, ball bearings, and a circuit board to detonate a device remotely. The FBI met with the political and media consultant on Saturday before raiding his place. He admitted to visiting black market poker sites, but after the raid he'd fled, and they initiated a nationwide manhunt for him. San Francisco Police Chief Greg Suhr says he was spotted yesterday and arrested. Today, Suhr asked people to report loved ones who are in crisis.
Tell us ahead of time before anybody can be hurt, including the person in that dark place.
Chamberlain had posted a suicide note to social media that said while he was depressed, he'd visited some dark websites, but that he was not dangerous, Ron.
Jessica, the bodies of 3 women, all members of the same family, were found this morning with their throats slashed inside a house in Fort Worth, Texas. Officers had responded to a 911 call from the husband of one of the victims. Buoyed by a big Memorial Day weekend, auto sales rose last month to a 9-year high.
Shrugging off or maybe even driven by an unprecedented number of recalls, GM sales jumped 13%, twice what analysts had predicted. And GM was not alone. Chrysler up 17%, Ford 3%, both also beating estimates. And it wasn't just the Detroit 3. Nissan May sales up 19%, Toyota 17%. In Lyons, Illinois, I'm Jeff Flock, Fox News Radio.
Stocks were lower on Wall Street with the Dow losing 21 points. One exception, Hillshire Brands. It rose nearly 10% as Pilgrim's Pride and Tyson Foods continue their duel to take over the company. Pilgrim's Pride fell 2%, Tyson down 3%. I'm Ron Platter, Fox News Radio.
Your health is not just about your physical condition. Science is learning that your mind has a great influence on your overall health. A healthy body needs a healthy spirit and a healthy attitude to run its best. Join Helene Burke for Healthy People to discover ways to help you build the healthy life you want. Monday evenings at 6 p.m. Eastern Time on the HayZ Radio Network.
Whoa, babies, the night can be so dark, and
And so God bless it, lonely. Hey, we don't want to live like this anymore. Hey, there is light in the middle of the night. Oh yeah, the Coyote Medicine Show with Grandpa Coyote. Right here on the Hazy Radio Network. Oh, of course, at midnight.
Why does my heart want more when you've given me everything? Why does this fight keep coming back for more? How long will the last drop have to be the enemy? Where does it end? Where does it end? The ending. Why am I wasting time thinking there's an end in sight? Why do I keep unraveling my mind? How long till my breakup dawn offends the night? Where does it end? Where does it
Looking at the world through the wide-angle lens. It's The Broader View with Hazy and on the Hazy Radio Network. Now, back to the show.
Welcome back to the Broader View here on the Hazy Radio Network. It's 6 minutes past the hour, and we have an incredible guest this evening. If you weren't listening during the first part of our show, we are talking to Tom Rasch, and he is an accomplished comic book and concept artist. His work has been featured in The People vs. George Lucas. He was a senior concept artist on the Future Online MMO and Burst Online's Warmage. I hope I said that. War Mage, thank you. Tom is also promoting Black Alpha, his highly anticipated creator-owned sci-fi superhero series that can now be seen on The Big Bang Theory and in the pages of USA Today. So please join us in welcoming Mr. Tom Rasch back to the show.
Woohoo.
Hey guys, I'm back. Actually, Clarissa, I was going to tease you about the way you just said War Mage. It almost sounded like a little bit of Borat meets a Minnesotan accent, like War Mage, maybe slightly European. I like it. It's cool.
Well, like we discussed during the break, this is really my brother's forte. You know, the comic books and all of this stuff. This is really his area of expertise, but his bowling league started tonight.
Yeah. Oh, that's fine. I was going to say we're going to talk about accents for a minute. And once again, it's like, you know how somebody says like they're doing like a homage, but they call it homage. That's kind of what your warmage. It sounded somewhat French, like iconique. So yeah, good job.
It's a warmage. Yes.
Yeah, good job. Very well done.
We're changing the whole concept of that word right there.
Yeah, I'm never going to be. I'll be like, hey, yes, I worked for Burst Online in this game called a warmage. So thank you for that.
Oh, I love it. Well, we were talking about how you kind of got into all of this and what your inspirations were before you started Black Alpha. But Black Alpha actually started way back in your teens.
Even earlier than that, 11 years old.
11. How did the concept of Black Alpha come to you?
Well, okay, so, you know, like I said, I got introduced to comic book characters through television. When we came back to the States after my dad was stationed overseas, a couple of my uncles who were teenagers would pull their comic books out from my grandma's attic, and I started flipping through and realized there was a whole plethora, I'll use that word again, plethora of comic book characters I'd never heard of from like cartoon shows. And during this time, that's when I got more excited about comics. Well, right around the mid-'70s, there were a couple of new comic book series that had premiered. One was called The Man Called Nova. The other one was called Star-Lord. Now, I got a little interesting tidbit here. There's the Guardians of the Galaxy that's coming out this summer from Marvel. In August is when that's being released. The lead character who's being played by, I forget, he's on Parks and Recreation. He's not a household name yet, at least not to me, but he's playing Star-Lord, actually, in that movie. And then the Nova from the other comic I mentioned is actually part of the Nova Corps. They're actually going to be featured in the same film. So I tell people it's kind of interesting that the two initial kind of cosmic superhero type characters that inspired Black Alpha are going to be introduced to the audience, like a bigger audience through the box office in August. And then my series is also taking off kind of around the same time, which I think is pretty interesting.
Oh, cool.
But yeah, so that's kind of the initial. Well, and of course, going back to Star Trek and stuff, you know, I guess I was like, I would sit there and I would kind of, you know, I'd tell people I'd sit there and doodle pictures of Batman and Spider-Man and the Enterprise, and then after a while I'd be like, hey, I'm going to start kind of doodling my own character. And of course, the original version of Black Alpha looked like I ripped off pretty much the costume from the original X-Men comics and just put a different helmet on him. So I knew I wanted it to take place in space because of those comic characters plus of Star Trek. And then I said I wanted him to have a cool spaceship that he could fly around in. So back then, I mean, you know, when you're a grade schooler, your ideas are pretty big and grandiose, but they haven't been entirely refined. And so I just tell people he was a space superhero and with a ship, and that's all that remained intact. And that was kind of what was going on for a number of years. Mm-hmm. And it wasn't until I got into my 20s, going into my 30s, I started thinking, what do I want to do with this? How do I want to change it? And ironically enough, you know, the funny thing was that I was attracted, like I said, to Batman. And one of the things I liked about Batman and then Batman's predecessors like Zorro, I like the idea of the aristocrat who goes around and helping people. It's kind of, you know, that idealized notion of us. And there are people who are kind of born into wealth and you know, they have all these things.
Did we lose Tom?
I think we lost Tom.
Oh, no.
Oh, no. I'm back.
There you are.
Oh, there he is.
Yeah, we just... So what was the last part you heard? I apologize. Not sure what happened there.
Well, you kind of faded out, and then you were all of a sudden gone. But you were talking about how it transformed in your 20s.
Okay, well, yeah, I won't. Like I said, I'll sort of try and streamline this a little bit. Basically, I decided that I wanted to initially do kind of an aristocratic character, mm-hmm. But in space, and I started to, believe it or not, sort of take influence from the Moses story, where I was like, well, it's going to be about this guy, and he's sort of raised in this noble house that oversees these star systems. Turns out he's actually adopted. He's not the rightful heir. Finds out that his family and the kingdom, which he's part of, has been enslaving these systems. And so he renounces his birthright and pretty much decides to kind of use one of these power suits to set the people free. And then, of course, I would tell certain people about that. And they go, oh, it kind of sounds a lot like Dune. That's another thing I learned, too, that whatever you do is always going to kind of sound like something. But back then I was like, oh, well, I can't have it sound like Dune. So I went back and I started thinking about the story. And I was like going, as compelling as doing a story about a prince who finds out he's not really a prince might be kind of compelling from a storytelling point of view, I decided to kind of reverse it and be like, because I love the Three Musketeers story, I'm like, what if it's actually about a peasant wants to become part of this royal guard that serves kind of a king, a monarch figure, like D'Artagnan wanted to become one of the Three Musketeers.
Right.
So that's when I changed it, that the character instead was going to not be like, the heir that, renounces his throne. It's actually going to be about the guy on the other end of the spectrum in the outlying systems who pretty much grows up in poverty, has a dream of becoming these guardsmen characters, which are kind of mythical folk heroes in their culture, their universe. But in a roundabout way becomes that, but not the way that he expected. And because I started thinking, I'm like, well, who am I going to relate to more? I'm going to relate to the guy. Because, I didn't grow up in the best circumstances. My parents were poor. I come from a large family, the oldest of 10 kids, so there's a lot of mouths to feed. I'm like, that's the guy I'm going to relate to.
Mm-hmm.
And so I restructured the story a little bit. And once I kind of picked that direction, I sort of, obviously, like I said, I was kind of mindful of my influence. I'm like, well, since I love Batman and I love Star Trek, he's going to be a guy that has a suit that basically is full of gadgets. He's going to travel around on a spaceship, which I also call, the Batmobile and the Batcave in space. But like the Enterprise and Millennium Falcon, that ship is also a character. It's kind of the home base of operations, the home area for the audience to kind of relate to as he's going out and doing his adventures and missions. But I knew that I wanted that to be essential. But like you said, with all the influences, I'm like, he's going to be Batman in the fact that he's driven to sort of continue on this mission. He loses his way for a while, but he goes on this mission, but he doesn't have Bruce Wayne's wealth.
Okay.
He ends up getting the ship and the suit, that he finds from a fallen guardsman, etc. But it's still kind of those core things are all there. We're still about this young guy. And you'll excuse me if I nerd out for a minute. Being a huge Star Wars fan that I am, I love the original trilogy. I'm not very fond of the prequels, and part of that was the storytelling to me kind of fell apart. But more importantly, I'm one of those really, really huge Star Wars nerds that feels like the very first movie where Darth Vader was the villain character, and then you get Obi-Wan Kenobi talking about Luke's father, that Luke's father and Darth Vader were separate characters in that first film.
Right.
I think that later on, Lucas got an idea when they were doing the second story. He actually became more interested in his antagonist than protagonist. So he wanted to tell Darth Vader's story. And I feel like that's kind of where, to me, things started to unravel. And so, I would constantly bitch about this to my friends, and that's why they would sit there and go, well, don't you have your own kind of space story you've been wanting to tell? And why don't you just tell your story rather than getting mad about, the direction Star Wars went? So I'm like, hey, that's not a bad idea. And so I decided, I'm like, the things that I really enjoyed about, especially the original Star Wars and elements, I'm like, I want to make sure that I sort of stay really interested, obviously, in my lead to make him as compelling as the other characters, and as well as, they say your hero's only as good as your villain is. And so I wanted to make sure that each character has a certain kind of depth to them. And one of the mantras I have in my story, too, is that you'll find out a lot about Black Alpha or Transcendent Antares as the lead. But because we're telling it in a series structure, you'll actually learn a lot about the supporting characters and even the villains, so that they're not so one-dimensional.
Right.
You'll maybe understand why they're so motivated to hate now. Something maybe tragic happened to them as well. And that, to me, is always kind of an interesting allegory for the hero's journey within our own lives. Like I said, is that certain people will come from a background and take one direction. Certain people can come from a similar background and take a positive direction.
Sure.
And like I said, every one of those kind of is a really unique sort of story that I like to either be a part of or like to be, kind of on the ride with the audience. So.
Well, and just on a personal note, I can think of worse storylines than Dune. I'm actually a fan of Dune. So, when you're talking about things falling, along the lines and sounding like other stories, Star Wars or Three Musketeers or even Dune, I think there are far more storylines out there of a person that finds out they're secretly royalty, such as in Star Wars, as opposed to someone who has grown up being royalty and then finds out they're not. So.
Yeah, well, I was going to say, when I mentioned the Dune comment, I'm not really, I mean, I'm familiar with the material kind of from a rougher overview, like as far as the novels. I was not a big fan of the David Lynch version that came out in 1985, the one with Sting and stuff.
Right.
That movie kind of weirded me out, I remember. But I was intrigued by the core concepts. But when I say being compared, I think when you're a younger creator, you're hoping that your idea is original enough that, you know, but once again, I've said this too. It's kind of like, you know, how Elvis sort of changed music and then the Beatles came along and then everything just sort of springs out from there, like for music. The same thing can be said of like comic books and cinema. It's like, because there was the initial thing, and then as it grows and sort of webs out and influences our culture, it's going to basically have the same multiplying effect on people that are inspired by those stories. Right. So as it webs out, you'll have so many people that, like myself, have been inspired by Star Trek or Star Wars. I think for me, because I wasn't like, I wouldn't say that I'm not a fan of Dune's concepts, but I haven't read the books. I only saw the movie, and I was like going, well, I hope it's, I hopefully, if they're going to compare it to something, hopefully it's what I've been into, I guess. And so, and also, like I said back then, I was just like, oh, sounds like Dune. Well, apparently somebody's going to think that I ripped off Dune. However, I will say this, though, the one thing that did kind of remain intact, consciously or not, is that Trandon Antari's name kind of has a ring a little bit like Paul Atreides, you know, and yeah, so I think that there's some of that in there. But I guess, you know, I think that's when I sort of consciously, like I said, make the choice to sort of go with the materials that I'm very passionate about. And so, like you said, yes, there could probably be worse things than Dune to be compared to. But like I said, I've learned as I've gone along too, and that's why when I pitch Black Alpha to people. I forget that if I did this earlier on in the interview, but I basically tell people the elevator pitch is, what if you took the Batman story, you sprinkled in some Iron Man tech, and you dropped it off in the middle of Star Wars like universe, so that they kind of get the tone and sort of the feel of. So I've learned like to kind of in a way wear my influences on my sleeve, because as I've gone back and like learned of like biographies about, you know, George Lucas or Gene Roddenberry, you know, the creators of Star Wars and Star Trek. I can go back and find several things that inspired their story that they wanted to tell. You know, obviously Star Wars and Star Trek have the space western in common. In George Lucas's end, he was a fan of Kurosawa, so there's the Japanese sword master, you know, epics like Seven Samurai, and then just general mythology and kind of the Arthurian stuff, you know, kind of works its way into Star Wars. And then, you know, with Star Trek, you have Jason and the Argonauts, and like I said, the Horatio Hornblower, the western in space is kind of how he picked stars. So yeah, I very much have learned that. Like I'm like, even if it becomes original to us and seems to kind of click on all these levels, it did start somewhere, and these guys all had, you know, a multitude of influence as well. So
now, do you ever have anybody come up to you and go, "I love the concept, but what you need is something like this," and they throw something just so absurd and so obscure, like, you know, like unicorns and hippos, you know, something that's just way far left field. Do you get that? A lot of people going, it's this.
Not from the people in the public. I would imagine you'll run into some of that as you're having meetings for films and TV shows. I mean, you're always. I've been pretty lucky so far. I really haven't had anyone. You know, I mean, if I get feedback from, say, because like I was telling Zita earlier, I do a lot of heavy promoting, probably more than anything on social media like Facebook. I'll have people kind of comment that they're like, man, his shoulder pads really huge and look cumbersome. And I'm like going, well, there's kind of a stylistic choice to that. And then I have to throw in some of the mythology of the story by saying, well, it's actually based on memory armor, and it's not earth material, and it can morph into glider wings and numerous other materials. That's about it. I mean, overall, I think that, no one's ever sat there and said anything except that the one thing I have appreciated, like I said, is that people were really intrigued just by the look of it, and just kind of even a very base of the premise before I even had a chance to go into the story. So I'd say 99% of the time I haven't run into that. But like I said, I'm sure down the road there'll be those kind of things popping up, especially if you're going to be talking to potential TV show producers, film producers, that they kind of have their agenda saying, well, you know, this is the new thing right now. Can we have this in there? And that's kind of the, sort of the battles you'll have to learn to fight when you get to that point. So
absolutely.
Although, you know, unicorns, I actually tried to bring a unicorn into our game one of the last games I worked on. It was supposed to be a steed from hell. But it looked like a unicorn that was on fire, covered in black. And they were like, no, we are absolutely never having unicorns in the game. So if I'm like, but what if it's a cool uniform? It's a Hellsteed. And they're like, nope, absolutely not. I'm like, can we bring leprechauns? And they're like, no leprechauns either. So I try and do what I can to basically make something that people would think is ridiculous and figure out how can I actually make that cool and make it work in the story. So you never know.
See, they're not thinking outside the box. Unicorn
exactly.
Can be cool. It can be cool. It can be cool. When you start coming up with an idea, do you come up with kind of a pseudo storyline and then create the character around it, or do you create the character first and develop the story around the character?
It kind of really depends. I mean, like I said, Black Alpha started off with more of a concept, and then everything has grown from there, and especially as long as it's been around. I actually have a female protagonist story that I'd like to tell. Her name is Evelyn 11, and it's kind of about this soldier in the near future who's part of this kind of new European coalition who wakes up, kind of like the Bourne movie. She wakes up without a memory, can't remember the war that she fought. And then she ends up finding these kids that she's kind of hoping to protect to kind of get them reunited with their parents in this sort of barren, post-apocalyptic wasteland. That was the story that came after I drew the drawing of her.
Oh, okay.
I just decided I wanted to do kind of a really cool, futuristic, sort of very kind of tough, strong female lead who was wearing a little bit of a kind of a amalgamation of like the old the Russian uniforms of the military. So sometimes that'll happen. I'll be like, well, I want this to be the cover of my sketchbook. And then I do the drawing, and actually she's on my banner that if people have seen the banner that I'm standing in front of or on my Facebook page, she's standing there kind of by Black Alpha and one of the other characters and then some Marvel and DC. I actually have had a lot of people come up and ask about her when I've been at the cons because that's the banner behind me, and they'll be like, well, yeah, that Black Alpha guy, okay, yeah, he's fine. What about her? What's her story? And so that's kind of what happened to me was I was so intrigued by the drawing that I did of her that I started constructing a story around her. That sort of seemed to fit. It's almost like kind of an artistic jam in my mind where I'm like, well, obviously she's a soldier, probably from the near future. Where do I go from there?
Right. Fascinating.
Very cool.
Fascinating. When you started putting Black Alpha together, originally, where did you want to take it? I mean, how large was your vision? Was it just comic books, or did you want to take it all the way?
Well, as scary as this may sound, at 11 years old, before I even knew what transmedia, and for anyone out there listening, transmedia is pretty much the way things are done currently. You don't just have a comic book, or you don't just have a TV show. You have the comic book, the TV show, the cartoons, the merchandising, which obviously can mean video games and toys and any collectibles, coffee mugs. All belong to that IP, and as I've said, I've been that kind of a fan too as a child because the very first toy I ever earned for myself by trimming hedges for a week for a quarter yard was a Captain Kirk action figure. So I wanted that tangible thing. I didn't just want the TV show. I got my hands on comic books and the models of the ship. So that's been part of my life, almost relevant. And so I figured, well, and even when I was a kid, I'd be like, well, Black Alpha is going to be a cartoon or a comic. I definitely want toys of it. And I would love to see them. So I would actually stand out at recess by myself, like I said, being the socially awkward loner that I was. And I would actually hum music to what the movie soundtrack would possibly sound like, which was pretty much music that I ripped off of the 1979 version of that, the Black Hole, the live action version of the Black Hole movie.
Oh.
But I would listen to music, because I'm like, well, it can't be Star Wars. People are going to recognize that. And then I would do that. I would actually hum like, this is what it's going to look like when the opening credits roll in a film. And I would do this stuff. And so, I tell people, I said, so everything that I have in front of me now, the only thing we're really missing, because there's actually a prototype video game that my friends and I developed last year that you can play on online, of Black Alpha.
Yeah.
So I've got the prototypes. I've got the video game prototype. I got the toys protypes. I've got the exposure in USA Today with the comic, the publisher being interested. And then, like I said, now being in talks with film producers and the cartoon stuff. It's kind of everything that I envisioned ever since I was 11 years old. So, like I said, I probably didn't quite understand it at that time, but I knew that I wanted it to be this bigger thing, just the way that Star Wars or Star Trek and Batman were these big things. They weren't just a movie. They were everything that went along with it. So
yeah. Oh, just incredible concept. I love it. Okay, let's go ahead and take our bottom of the hour break. And I did ask Tom if he wanted to stay longer, so he's most appreciative in doing that. So don't go away. We'll be right back. You're listening to Tom Rasch on the Hazy Radio Network at the Broader View. We're right back. We're clear.
be sure to listen to Backstage with Hazy, JoJo, and Wanda on hazyradio.com, 8 to 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, Friday nights.
Yeah, exactly.
I know. Because we're going to be the happening show. Yes, ma'am. I can just feel it.
Something's happening, but we don't know. I'm not sure what that is at the moment. I keep waiting for something to happen.
Don't you do it.
Don't you do it. Hold that. This show is scripted.
Oh, yes, it is.
We're writing it as...
I mean, that's what our chats are about every night. We have been planning this, and we're working off of the biggest live script there is on internet radio.
No, we're working off the biggest lie you've just ever told.
Hey everyone, it's Karen Frazier. I'm here with my co-host of Paranormal Underground Radio, Rick Hale.
Hi everyone.
We invite you to join Paranormal Underground Radio on the Hazy Radio Network to explore the unexplained every Thursday night from 6 to 8 p.m. Pacific and other times in the flyover states.
Each week we talk with investigators in the field, researchers, authors, and experts about topics that include paranormal investigation, ufology, cryptozoology, and spirituality.
So please join us each Thursday at 6 p.m. Pacific, 9 p.m. Eastern for Paranormal Talk with great guests right here on hazyradionetwork.com.
The traditional light bulb, a groundbreaking invention in 1879. It's time we switch to longer-lasting Energy Star light bulbs. They're more efficient than the old bulbs, like a text message is more efficient than a carrier pigeon. And they cut down on our energy costs. Because in our own groundbreaking age, we deserve a light bulb that saves us some cash. Saving energy saves you money. Learn more at EnergySavers.gov. Brought to you by the U.S. Department of Energy and the Ad Council.
Hey, this is Clarissa Vasquez from Periscope Uncensored, and you're listening to the Hazy Radio Network.
looking at the world through the wide-angle lens. It's The Broader View with Hazy and on the Hazy Radio Network. Now, back to the show.
And we are back with The Broader View and our very special guest, Tom Rasch, who we've got for another couple minutes. Tom, congratulations on everything that you're doing.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
This really is a dream come true for you. And, I know you worked your ass off to get where you are. And, the things that you're doing is phenomenal. Phenomenal. Where can everybody find you?
Well, actually, I tell people more than ever, I have an old blog spot for Black Alpha, which, it's been a while since I've been on there, and then I promote my artwork. So, in all honesty, I'd say 98% of where I promote is on Facebook now.
Yeah.
A lot of the opportunities I've had have come about because of that kind of stuff. So I tell people, look for Tom Rasch on Facebook. So it's Tom and then R-A-S-C-H. And I have numerous folders that I promote my comic book work and even Black Alpha stuff on there. And then I share a lot of the announcements, like when Black Alpha's on The Big Bang Theory, when it's in USA Today. And the picture that you will see was the one that Clarissa points out, where there'll be this long-haired guy with a really, really muscular body, which may or may not be me, but it's more than likely not me. Yeah. So you'll be able to recognize that. And then also there's a Black Alpha Facebook page. All you have to do is look up Black Alpha, and it's BLACK ALPHA, and you'll find that on Facebook. It'll be a fictional character that comes right up. But I would have to say that's really more than anything in this day and age. What I love about it, too, is it's kind of a way to get people sort of personally interested, because they sort of get to see the behind-the-scenes journey, which, for lack of a better term, I call kind of the American idolization of that story, where there's someone you see someone with a dream, and then you see them building that dream, you know what I mean, as they move forward. Kind of like what TV shows like American Idol have done. It seems like people really enjoy that. I know I kind of do too, and that's pretty much where you'll find the majority of what I do now is on Facebook. And there's a Twitter page for Black Alpha. I will admit I don't get on there very much or promote, but that is there too. And and anything else you'll find like link-wise, pretty much I'll just share on the Black Alpha or Tom Rasch page on Facebook. Absolutely.
And people can find you at Comic-Cons around the country, can't they?
Yeah.
When you go periodically.
Hold on just a sec.
As he scrambles to pull up his schedule. I do the same thing. It's like, I'm going to be where, when?
Yeah, he has to look at his little black book.
No, I'm sorry, I got distracted for a moment.
That's quite all right. That happens in radio.
Anyway, what was the question again?
Comic-Cons.
The Denver Comic-Con is coming up here. Let me look at the calendar. It's about a week and a half away almost, so that's kind of the major one. Hoping to do some ones actually out East Coast in the fall, but that's sort of what it's June 13th to the 15th.
Very cool. Very, awesome. Very, very cool. Well, I know you have to run, and I won't keep you because I know you have company coming, or company there. So I won't keep you, but I wanted to make sure that everybody knew where to find you, and we will continue to promote you and Black Alpha here on the network. And I will talk to you soon, Tom.
Okay, cool. Sounds good.
Okay. Thank you, Tom. We'll talk to you later.
Tom. Okay.
Don't forget.
All right, thanks. You guys have a good evening.
You too, Tom. Don't forget Tom Rasch, Black Alpha. You can check him out on Facebook. Check him out on Twitter. He's got YouTube. I've got all the links. I'll have all the links up on my page. And don't go away. We're going to take a quick break, and we'll come back and finish off the show.
Looking at the world through the wide-angle lens. It's The Broader View with Hazy and on the Hazy Radio Network. Now, back to the show.
And welcome back to the last, 15 minutes of The Broader View. So, Clarissa, how are you?
I'm great.
I should actually, Sybil.
Yeah, Sybil. Well, like we were discussing in the earlier part of the show, last week I was you, and then Sunday I was Brandon. Tonight I'm Wanda, and during the course of this show I learned that tomorrow I'm going to be Scott.
I know, you're going to be like everywhere and everything.
I know, so I think we should just change my name to Sybil.
I think that could probably be worked out.
I like that a lot better than being called Claire. So,
what's wrong with Claire?
Clarissa is an old family name.
Mm-hmm.
And my great-grandmother, who was a Clarissa, she shortened hers to Claire C. And my aunt, who was a Clarissa, shortened hers to Claire. And, it doesn't resonate with me. I'm not a Claire. I'm not a Claire C. My parents still call me CJ. They're the only people really on the planet, aside from old childhood friends, that can really get away with calling me that and live to tell about it.
Uh-huh.
But, no, I'm a Clarissa, and that's, or a Sybil, depending if I'm on the radio. Chances are I'm a Sybil.
We have a caller.
We do.
We do. We have Scott.
Hi, this is Morgan Freeman.
How are you, darling?
Yeah, this is the first free chance I've actually had in 3 days.
I know.
Yeah. Yeah, I have made a law because I truly am God of all I survey. Nobody is to mention June 2nd again in the word birthday.
Oh. So June 2nd is off the calendar now forever?
Yes.
Not even June 2nd from this year and next year and every year forward?
Yes. I am like a Roman emperor, and when I say there's no more June 2nd, there's no more June 2nd.
How about
I guess that means we can't call Wanda and have her sing to you then.
I'd probably, well, if this was Rome, I'd probably send an army after her.
Okay. Actually, she sang to you on Friday, though.
Yeah, but I was in a much better mood.
Oh.
Yeah.
So I can't.
She did sing to you on backstage. So
yes. I can't even say 2 June, huh?
No.
Either one. How about 6/2?
Well, it's close to my height, but no, it is just There's been a lot of stuff. Unfortunately, there's been a lot of stuff going on with me. I mean, I know like the inside people on the network kind of know about what's going on, and I don't know if Clarissa's talked about it yet, but for the listeners,
not on the air. I haven't.
Okay. Well, Crossing the Void Radio, the shows are still going to go on, but there gonna have to be some modifications done because things I don't want to go over. Of course, I don't want to talk about it on the air, but things have within my family have kind of been turned on their head.
Mm-hmm.
And so what's going to happen basically this week until I can until I start figuring this stuff out is Clarissa is going to be substituting for me as host. I should be because I have to work tomorrow. I have to work tomorrow till 8 o'clock. And I should be home by 10. Hopefully by then I'll be able to pop in and, at least kind of do some hosting duties.
I get to do my own crossplay tomorrow.
Yes.
Woo-hoo.
Yes.
I'll be doing the gender bender thing. I'll be playing Scott.
Even though there's no way you can be me, because I'm just
far better looking.
Because I'm.
Yes.
Well, of course you are. You have boobs. I don't. So.
You don't even have man boobs?
Why ever?
But. No, yeah, just so Clarissa's going to be taking over for me. I hopefully will be back on the air by 10 o'clock, at least to come into the conversation. And we haven't talked about it yet. We had a production. We were supposed to have a production meeting last night. I couldn't, unfortunately, be there.
We still had a production meeting last night.
Yeah. Thank God these guys still had a production meeting. Came up with a Plan B because I didn't know Plan B was going to be needed till today. And I couldn't be there. Something came up. I'm sure these guys probably thought I was dead because I never got back to them.
No, we figured you were out, drinking sake and eating sushi like Baby Whale.
No. Unfortunately, no.
wish you were.
There's no baby whale. There was no baby whale last night. I didn't even get a birthday cake. That's how bad this weekend's been.
Aww.
So there was nobody. Yeah, I didn't even want to hear it. I mean, I was in such a bad mood last night after all what's been going on has been going on that I had to get out of the house, and because I was so frustrated, and my father sent me a birthday card, and just on the front of it, it just said, for hopes and wishes, this is the best birthday you've ever had. I ripped the freaking card up.
Oh,
that's how bad. That's how emotionally and psychologically frustrating these last few days have been. But but it's a hurdle. It's just a hurdle. I got to try to figure some things out, and there may have to. I got to talk to you guys because there may have to be some. There could be some production issues, because of the way my work schedule is right now, and hopefully this doesn't go on for very long. But until then, I just want to let the listeners know, no, we're not ending show. I'm not going to end shows. But but it could be a nice thing. It could be a nice relief. You're probably, you won't hear me on this network as much as you usually do. So,
no, and instead you get to hear more of me.
Well,
and there go their ratings.
The thing is that this is where family comes in. This is where we show everybody else that we, the Hazy Radio Network, and the hosts, are family. That, we all pitch in, we all help each other out, and, we don't abandon anybody. So
that's right.
we just work out what we got to work out.
Yeah, it's really kind of a sucky time here, and on top of it, yesterday my car broke down.
Oh, jeez.
Yes, nobody's allowed to say June 2nd ever again.
Ever again. Though next year we just have to make it a better one.
God, I hope so.
Yeah.
It's this was not a fun one. This was this is the stuff that's going on is just it just made it ridiculously difficult to even try to do anything.
Yeah.
So.
Yep. Nope, I hear you.
And the last thing I heard from the person that I'm seeing for the anxiety stuff is said, make sure you do something fun on your birthday. Well, that didn't happen.
I know.
But hey, well, what are you gonna do? I mean, the way I look at it, whatever the higher power is, whatever higher power you believe, he throws us. He's gonna throw us curveballs. He's gonna throw us pitches. And every once in a while, we're gonna get hit by one. The thing is to get back up.
Absolutely.
And we'll get back. We'll get back up from this, and I'll be, hopefully it won't take too long. But it's gonna be at least a little while until things get back to normal.
Yeah. No, it'll be fine. It'll all work out.
I hope. Yeah,
so
we're optimistic things will work out, but it's just going to take a while for them to work out. So.
Absolutely. And some things do, but it'll be for the best, right?
Yeah, I mean, everything happens. Yeah, I'm a true believer in everything happens for a reason.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, this happened for a reason. We don't know what it is yet, but this definitely happened. There's a reason this happened, and it happened the way it did. And like I said, hopefully it'll resolve itself here.
Yeah.
Hopefully sooner than later. But hey, we just got to take it day by day.
That's right. Exactly. But we're getting ready to close out the show. So because I got about a 4-minute song coming up, but want to let you know that now tomorrow night for Crossing the Void, I'll be here. I'll be producing. And who's the guest tomorrow night?
Right now, the guest is Nicole Strickland, but I got a message from her today that she's been ill, so we don't know for sure if she's going to make it or not, but Doug and I have a backup plan in the event that she's not able to attend. But if she is able to join us, we'll be talking about the Queen Mary.
Oh, cool. Very cool. Okay, very good. And then who do you have on Periscope on Friday?
Periscope Uncensored on Friday is going to be Mr. Mark Anthony is coming back to the show.
Yes, I like Mark.
Psychic lawyer Mark Anthony.
Good guy. Good guy. And then Monday night on the Broader View, we have the Ms. Allie Cheslick is going to be joining us.
Woohoo!
So,
Allie's
yeah, Allie's going to be fun. So she's going to tear up the network. So who knows what's going to happen on Tuesday.
What was the last time? Well, the last time, was she on your show?
Mm-hmm.
I don't remember if she was on your show.
She was on Backstage.
Backstage, the last time she
weeks
gave me a
ago.
reading, it was funny. It was hilarious.
And that's Allie.
Yeah, it was.
That's the way it'll be.
It was like 2 days after my dog died.
Yeah.
And I called in, but she didn't say anything about my dog.
No, she just cheered you up.
Yeah,
But
she
that's
did.
Allie. That's Allie. No, Allie.
Allie's not the type of person where if something negative has happened, I've never heard her kind of talk about anything negative that's happened recently. I've never heard her in any of the shows I've ever heard her on actually talk about something that happened just recently, and because she doesn't, I really do think she doesn't want to bring up the bad thoughts
Correct.
again.
She wants to bring everything to the positive.
Yeah.
So with that, we will go ahead and close out this show, and I'm going to thank Clarissa for co-hosting with me this evening.
It was my pleasure.
Yeah, Wanda took the night off, so I will be back tomorrow night. I'll be back on Thursday because I'm producing 2 shows Thursday night, and then I'll be back Friday night for Backstage. So
all right.
you guys got me all week.
Yay! Welcome back.
I take 2 weeks off, and look what happens.
No, they had me all day. They had me the last 2 weeks. So
I know. Now I gotta make up for it. So with that, we'll go ahead and close out the show, and stay tuned for Grandpa Peter Coyote coming up at midnight. No, I take it back. It is Tuesday. Coming up next should be Radionics.
Oh, that's right. Radionics
is back. I know. See, I've been gone 2 weeks, and here I am. Don't even know what's going on. So Chris G will coming on. DJ3 will be coming on with his music, and I never know what he's going to play, but it's going to be popular music. And then following him is going to be Grandpa Peter Coyote. Then don't forget tomorrow night, Crossing the Void, and Thursday night. Now, Paranormal Underground and Dark Radio are not going to be on live. I'll be running some replays for them for the month of June. So they're taking the month off to get some personal stuff that they had to get. They're so busy. Oh my God, they're so busy. So they're taking the month of June off. They'll be back in July, but we'll have their shows up. And then, of course, Friday night, Backstage. And then Saturday night, we got a whole lineup, and we've got Emmy on Thursday, and all kinds of stuff going on. How's that sound?
Awesome.
How's that sound?
Lots of great stuff here on the Hazy Radio Network.
There certainly is. Don't forget to check the on-demand page if you want to hear some of the previous shows. I think they're pretty much up to date. And, of course, you've got Grandpa Peter Coyote during the afternoon as well. And many, many other shows on the network. So check the schedule and see what's coming up. I've got new shows coming up in July and August. So we'll get everybody organized and have a whole new network coming up.
Very cool.
Is that cool? That's cool. Okay, everybody, have a good night. I will see you tomorrow night on Crossing the Void, and along with Clarissa and Doug. Say goodnight, Clarissa.
Good night, Clarissa.
Say goodnight, Scott.
Morgan Freeman.
Good night, everybody. We'll see you tomorrow night.
When you designed a copy of the key inside my heart became deeper, dark, and lost, and formed a grave I almost took before I found the lock to my freedom.
Listening to The Broader View with Hazy, and join us next week for more open discussion from a wider perspective on the Hazy Radio Network. This has been a Hazy Media production.